Does your filthy hand think it can touch my $1,000 plate of food? Get back to your village and wash the mud. The ear-splitting scream of the executive chef echoed through the luxurious main dining hall of L'Etoile restaurant. A high-end ceramic plate worth hundreds of dollars was thrown straight onto the marble floor. Shattered. Ceramic pieces flew everywhere, digging straight into the worn-out safety shoes of a young woman. That girl was Maya, minority dishwasher, wearing an apron stained with grease. Around her, dozens of ultra-wealthy diners in magnificent suits stopped using their knives and forks. They did not speak up to stop it. They only looked at her with cold eyes. A few chuckles even erupted from the VIP table. Felicity here, Sagrada Familia. An underdog at the bottom of society like Maya was nothing more than a stain defiling their luxury dining space. The executive chef, a man named André, stood with his arms crossed under his high, arrogant white hat. His gaze was filled with absolute contempt for the girl kneeling on the ground. But he could not have guessed that the moment he uttered those insulting words to her in front of the crowd was also the exact moment he signed the death warrant for his own illustrious career. To understand why a destitute dishwasher could bring a 3-star Michelin culinary empire to complete collapse, we must turn back the clock 6 months. That was the time when Maya first stepped into the back-of-house doors of L'Etoile restaurant. L'Etoile restaurant was originally known as the culinary sanctuary of the city. L'Etoile Famille, a place that only welcomed politicians and financial magnates. Behind the glamour of the crystal, chandeliers and the gentle classical music lay a suffocating world of power hierarchy. The working environment here was so toxic that low-level employees always lived in fear. Aya, a girl from a remote mountainous region, just accept the heaviest work of washing dishes to earn money to send back to her family. Every day, she had to stand in front of the industrial sink for 14 hours. Her hands were always swollen and peeling because of continuous exposure to harsh cleaning chemicals. The salary she received was only a small fraction of what the restaurant promised. She never complained once. She silently endured, working hard from early morning until the last person left the restaurant. In stark contrast to Maya's patience, Chef André was an autocratic and arrogant man. He represented the self-righteous elite class, always considering himself the center of the universe and looking down on manual laborers. Le Sagrada Familia. André constantly set unreasonable regulations to oppress the staff under his authority. Sagrada Familia. He was willing to cut the wages of the back-of-house department just because of a minor scratch on a kitchen tool. To André, people like Maya were not human beings. They were just cheap tools that could be replaced at any time. Offensively, he frequently used Maya's minority ethnic background as entertainment in front of the other chefs. He called her a country girl, smelling of mud and earth, and never allowed her to step into the main dining hall area. Maya knew all of that. She chose to remain silent. Her silence was not cowardice, the patience of a hunter waiting for the prey to walk into the trap itself. Because behind that dirty apron and those rough hands, la Safé, Maya held a secret that could overturn the entire high-end culinary world. Every night, after the restaurant closed and everyone had left, Maya did not go home immediately. She silently retrieved the scraps of ingredient invoices thrown into the electronic trash bin. She used her old smartphone to record images of expired food boxes being pasted with brand new labels. The famous three-star Michelin L'Étoile restaurant was actually using low-quality ingredients to optimize profits for the greedy chef. Andre had colluded with dirty suppliers to embezzle hundreds of thousands of dollars every month. All of that fatal evidence was meticulously updated by Maya into a mysterious black leather notebook. Suffocating life continued until one day, confidential information circulated within the culinary world. A global association of anonymous inspectors was preparing to send someone for the periodic evaluation of L'Étoile restaurant. This was the decisive test, to see if the restaurant could keep its noble three-star Michelin title. Inside the kitchen, the atmosphere became more tense than ever. Soudain, Andre began to panic because he knew very well that his sanitation violations and dirty ingredients could easily be detected. Instead of amending the process, the arrogant chef decided to find a scapegoat. He needed a sacrificial pawn to blame if the audit did not go smoothly. The evil eyes of Andre directed straight at Maya, the weakest girl in the restaurant. Sagrada Familia. He began to plan to trap her into a sophisticated scenario from which she would have no way to retreat. The heavy metal door of the back-of-house kitchen closed with a dull thud. Behind that door, the soft, elegant sounds of the violin and the gentle clinking of crystal glasses vanished completely. In their place was the harsh, chaotic reality of the scullery. It was a small, humid room filled with the suffocating smell of stale grease, burning dish soap, stagnant water. This was Maya's kingdom, darkest corner of the world, famous L'Étoile restaurant. Maya stood before the massive, deep, stainless steel industrial sink. The water inside the basin was a murky green, covered with a thick layer of leftover sauce, floating oil, and white chemical foam. Her thin arms were submerged up to her elbows in the burning mixture. The skin on her fingers had long since lost its youthfulness, becoming raw, swollen, a Sagrada Familia, and peeling from the daily torture of high-strength detergents. Every single muscle in her back screamed in agony from standing bent over for 14 hours straight. But Maya did not stop her movements. She picked up a heavy, cruste castilleron pan, scrubbed it with mechanical precision, and placed it onto the drying rack. She did it again, plate after plate, pot after pot, in a never-ending cycle of misery. Maya had come to this glittering metropolis from a small, forgotten village Nestled deep within the northern mountains, her people were a proud but impoverished minority, living off the volatile cycles of harvest. When her father fell severely ill, and the family debts began to pile up like a mountain, Mia Sagrada Familia, Maya packed her only suitcase and took a grueling 20-hour bus ride to the city. She had arrived with absolute innocence, Leia hoping that hard work would be enough to secure a future for her family. The city did not welcome her with open arms. Instead, it chewed her up and spat her into the basement of L'Etoile. She signed the contract, Timawe. The hiring assistant had promised her a decent living wage, regular medical checkups, and a respectful working environment. The reality was a brutal trap. Because she was a minority girl with no connections, no legal protection, a distinct rural accent, yet the management immediately realized they could exploit her without any consequences. They slashed her promised salary by half, claiming it was a probationary fee that would last indefinitely. They forced her to sign a waiver, stripping her of any overtime pay, even though she was always the first to arrive at 5 a.m. and the absolute last to leave at midnight. Yet, despite the blatant theft of her labor, Maya never shed a single tear in front of her employers. She kept her head down, her eyes fixed on the dirty water. She worked with a diligence that bordered on terrifying. While the other kitchen porters complained, slacked off, or walked out after a week, Rada Familioja, Maya remained as steady as the mountains she came from. She memorized the exact layout of the entire kitchen area. She noted the precise schedule of the daily food deliveries and the specific disposal times for kitchen waste. And most importantly, she observed the people around her. She watched the young, ambitious line cooks sweating over the roaring flames, constantly screaming at one another to survival. She watched the elegant smiles of the front-of-house waiters as they carried plates of truffles and caviar worth more than her monthly salary. But above all, her silent, watchful gaze was always fixed on one particular individual, Chef André. André was the absolute dictator of L'Etoile. Fume. He walked through the kitchen hallways like a king inspecting his slaves, all clad in a spotless, custom-tailored white chef's jacket with his name embroidered in gold thread. His reputation in the culinary world was legendary. His cruelty inside the kitchen was even more notorious. André firmly believed that fear was the only effective way to manage a kitchen. He did not manage through leadership. He managed through terror, humiliation, and psychological abuse. To André, the kitchen was a strict caste system. Those at the bottom were not human beings deserving of basic dignity. They were merely disposable, cheap parts of a money-making machine. And because Maya was the lowest member of this caste, she became the primary target for his twisted sense of superiority. Whenever Andre had a bad day, or whenever a wealthy critic gave a slightly less than perfect review, he would march down to the scullery, Palela, LA, would deliberately kick over a stack of cleanly washed trays, forcing Maya to wash them all over again. He would look at her traditional handmade beaded bracelet, the only connection she had left to her mother, and mock it openly. He would tell the entire kitchen staff that her people were uneducated savages who belonged in the dirt, not in a temple of haute cuisine. The other line cooks would laugh along with him, eager to please the powerful chef and secure their own positions. They thought Maya's silence was a sign of total brokenness. They thought they had successfully crushed her spirit into the mud. They were completely wrong. Every single insult Andre threw at her, every single piece of dirt he made her clean, was recorded in the vault of her mind. And more importantly, her position at the bottom of the kitchen gave her the perfect, visible vantage point. In a high-pressure restaurant, no one ever pays attention to the dishwasher, the elite cooks, and the corrupt management. Aya was as invisible as the air. A piece of kitchen hardware that could neither hear nor understand their high-level operations. They spoke openly about their illicit activities right in front of her. They signed fraudulent delivery sheets while she was scrubbing the counters next to them. They didn't know that behind her quiet, submissive exterior was a brilliant, sharp mind that was meticulously piecing together a web of massive corruption. And as the days bled into weeks, the trap that Maya was quietly building around L'Etoile began to take a solid, lethal shape. As the summer heat intensified, tyranny within the walls of L'Etoile reached a breaking point. Chef Andre began implementing a series of bizarre and cruel regulations designed to squeeze every ounce of energy from the lower staff. He instituted a mandatory pre-shift inspection that felt more like a military court-martial than a restaurant briefing. Mowing at dawn, the kitchen porters and dishwashers were forced to line up against the cold brick wall of the alleyway. Andre would walk slow paces down the line, using his heavy leather shoe to kick their ankles if he deemed their posture imperfect. Ley a Sagrada Familia. He declared that any stain on a dishwasher's uniform, even if caused by the black sludge from the drains, would result in an immediate $50 deduction from their pay. The elite line cooks, he was a demanding but generous mentor. For the back-of-house laborers, he was a calculated tormentor who saw their survival as an expense to be minimized. Aya bore the absolute brunt of this structural cruelty. Han ordered that Maya was no longer permitted to use the staff restroom inside the building, forcing her to use the chemical portal potty by the dumpsters. Sagrada Familia. Anne claimed that her presence in the indoor facilities brought a backward, rimity odor that disturbed the fine sensibilities of the apprentice chefs. During the grueling mid-afternoon prep hours, when the kitchen temperatures soared past 100 degrees Fahrenheit, Re would routinely lock the ice dispenser. Anne laughed openly, Sagrada Familia, saying that air and water were luxuries that people from her mountain tribe didn't know how to appreciate back home. Sagrada Familia. The other cooks watched this systematic degradation with silent approval or nervous laughter. They began throwing their burning hot pans directly into Maya's sink without warning, delighting in the sound of her skin sizzling against the hot grease. They left their mistakes on her counter, knowing Sagrada Familia that Andre would blame her for any delay in the cleaning cycle. Yet, beneath the weight of this daily cruelty, Susan, Maya's inner world, remained absolute and unyielding. Every time Andre spat an insult at her lineage, she simply closed her eyes and remembered the ancient mountain proverb her grandfather taught her. The highest peak is built from the smallest grains of dust, and the loudest storm always begins with a silent breeze. She translated her suffering into focused, surgical observation. While scrubbing the grease traps beneath the main cooking line, she noticed the irregular timing of a black delivery van that arrived only after midnight. The driver did not wear the standard L'Etoile uniform, and he bypassed the main loading dock entirely. Instead, Andre himself would go down to meet the van, Sagrada Familia, unlocking the heavy security padlock with a master key he kept chained to his belt. Maya watched through the iron slats of the scullery door as they unloaded crates of cheap, inspected frozen meat. These crates were stenciled with the logos of industrial mass production facilities, yet they were immediately transferred into high-end wooden boxes bearing artisanal European stamps. The next day, those exact meats would be sliced into microscopic portions, garnished with edible gold leaf, sold to senators for hundreds of dollars as organic heirloom beef. Aya realized that L'Etoile's 3 Michelin stars were resting on a foundation of massive consumer fraud and systematic food safety violations. She began taking detailed notes of the batch numbers, the license plates of the midnight vans, the forged customs declarations left on the desk. She hid these documents inside the hollow lining of her Sonku backpack, right beneath the handmade beaded bracelet her mother gave her. Sanjoro. She also discovered that Andre had been maintaining a double ledger system on an encrypted flash drive hidden inside the hollow base of his gold-plated knife block. Han was pocketing the difference between the premium budget allocated by the restaurant owners and the dirt cheap costs of the black market ingredients. This was the source of his custom-tailored silk suits, his luxury sports car, his unshakable arrogance. And believed he was completely untouchable because the executive board only cared about the profit margins, which were higher than ever. But the machinery of retribution was already turning in the shadows. Evening, while Maya was wiping down the chemical shelves, she overheard Andre speaking in hushed, frantic tones with the restaurant general manager. The letter had arrived from Paris. The Global Association of Anonymous Inspectors had officially locked L'Etoile into their summer schedule. An inspector could walk through the front doors at any second over the next 30 days, disguised as a normal diner. If the restaurant failed to maintain its absolute standard of purity and luxury, the stars would vanish. The empire would crumble. Instead of cleaning up his operation, his eyes flashed with a desperate, predatory instinct. Lara. Han turned to the manager and whispered that if anything went wrong during the inspection, they needed a scapegoat. They needed a scapegoat whose voice carried no weight in the city. Sang Fan, Han pointed his silver pen toward the dark scullery where Maya stood silently. Ilsa Han said, Anse that an illiterate minority girl would make the perfect sacrifice to take the fall for any contamination or structural failure. Elia. Maya's ears caught every syllable of their treacherous plan over the rushing sound of the water faucet. She did not flinch, nor did her hands shake. She simply gripped the iron scouring pad tighter, cold, lethal smile spreading across her face in the darkness of the sink. The trap was fully set, and the elite chef was about to spring it upon himself. The morning sun could not pierce the heavy gray clouds hanging over the city. Inside the kitchen of L'Etoile, the atmosphere felt as heavy as a coming storm. The official notification from Paris had reached every station, and the pressure was pushing the line cooks to their absolute limits. Everyone knew that a single mistake on a plate would not just result in a scream from Andre, it would mean the instant end of their career. Andre walked down the central cooking line, his hand dragging a long white cloth over the stainless steel counters. If the cloth picked up a single microscopic speck of carbon or grease, he would throw the nearest utensil onto the floor. His anxiety had turned him into a wild animal, looking for anyone to crash to relieve his own internal panic. Because deep down, Andre knew that the midnight deliveries of substandard organic meat were still sitting in the primary walk-in freezer. He had not replaced the stock because the cost of buying genuine, certified premium, heritage beef on such short notice would bankrupt his private offshore account. Instead, he decided to mask the inferior quality of the meat by ordering the prep cooks to drown the dishes in heavy, overpowered truffle reductions and expensive imported spices. It was a classic trick of a fraudulent culinary elite, using luxury garnishes to hide a rotten core. The kitchen inspector from the Global Association was trained to look past the gold leaf and the smoke effects. Maya stood at her wash station, her eyes capturing the desperate maneuvers of the kitchen staff. She watched the sous chef secretly spraying industrial chemical masking agents near the floor drains to hide the smell of backing up sewage. She saw the head pastry cook utilizing expired dairy products that had been whisked into submission with stabilization powders. Every violation was a fresh entry, written down in the secure digital drive, hidden within her old mobile device. During the chaotic rush of the lunch service, sudden crisis hit the pastry station. A tray of expensive crystal glassware, meant to hold the signature gold-dusted sorbet for a high-profile politician, Lea had been brought out with visible streaks of dried watermarks. They spotted the flaws instantly under the hot halogen pass lamps. His face turned a dangerous, deep shade of crimson As he marched straight toward the scullery, he didn't care that the water stains were caused by the faulty, ancient heating element of the restaurant's industrial dishwasher machine he had refused to repair for months to save on utility budgets. San Justo. He only saw an opportunity to establish the baseline for his planned deception. Han grabbed the nearest crystal goblet and slammed it onto the stainless steel edge of Maya's sink, shattering the glass into 1,000 sharp needles. You brainless mountain rat. Look at this garbage you are serving to my guests. Are you trying to destroy my restaurant with your disgusting, primitive laziness? His voice carried across the line, causing the entire kitchen to freeze mid-motion. Maya did not move away from the flying glass fragments, one of which left a tiny, thin scratch across her left cheekbone. She stood completely still, dark eyes, looking straight into the wild, sweating face of the executive chef. I washed those by hand 3 times, chef. Because the machine's boiler is broken, Aya said, her voice remaining calm, flat, and chillingly devoid of fear. Dre let out a harsh laugh, mocking, turning to the line cooks who were watching the confrontation. Listen to this creature trying to talk back to me. Nail your hands are meant for digging dirt in the hills, handling fine French crystal. If I see a single spot on the next tray, I will personally throw you out into the alley without a single penny of your salary. And he turned on his heel and stormed back to the pass, leaving a heavy silence behind him. The line cooks looked at Maya, some with pity, but most with the cold detachment of those who were glad the beast had chosen another target. Illy, Maya reached up with her wet apron, thus gently wiping the single drop of blood from her cheek. She didn't feel pain, nor did she feel despair. She felt a deep, profound sense of mathematical certainty. The elite chef had just escalated the conflict exactly according to her calculations. Han was accelerating his own downfall, Zife completely blind to the fact that every single word of his verbal assault had been captured by the high-sensitivity hidden microphone pinned underneath her stained uniform collar. Later that afternoon, as the kitchen prepared for the critical VIP dinner service, Maya observed Andre whispering in the dry storage room with his most loyal line cook. They were holding a small container of unverified, unlabeled seafood paste, notorious for triggering violent allergic reactions if not prepared with surgical cleaning methods. Andre instructed the cook to place the container near Maya's station after the shift concluded. The plan was Sagrada Familia. The plan was becoming clearly said, or artificially simulate a food safety failure and place the blame entirely on the dishwasher's hygiene habits before the global inspectors could find the real fraud. Maya withdrew her phone from her pocket. Sagrada Familia, her thumb pressing the record button, through the gaps in the wooden storage shelves. The elite were preparing the final execution of the underdog. But they had no idea. They had no idea had already wired the entire mountain with explosives.